Hi, I'm Don.
Hi, I'm Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty, May 1st, 2011. We have kind of a long list of things to talk about. It's been kind of an eventful week in the news, so we'll try to cover each thing briefly. One of the most significant issues that came up this week was the Obama birth certificate. He finally produced a birth certificate. Most people say that it was photoshopped, experts who seem to know about such things. I personally use Photoshop, and when something's photoshopped well, I don't know how you could tell it was photoshopped, but they say they can, so.
Well, yeah, it has layers, and you didn't pull up the PDF, but
No.
you know they said that they could have easily collapsed the layers if they had just scanned in something and left the setting so that it would leave the things in layers. That could be one explanation for it not being a fraud but being in layers. But there were so many things about it that made it appear to be not only fraudulent but a very poor fake, and things like different fonts within the same set of text, so that and white outlines around letters and things like that made it look like it was spliced together. So, and a lot of the layers weren't obviously layers that would have just come in on a scan. So it appears to be a pretty bad fake, and yet Obama broke into major media networks with this announcement that Donald Trump had just gone so far that he had to talk about this issue and how silly it was, and here's my birth certificate, and yes, he was really born in Hawaii. And most of the people that just buy the mainstream media, they'll take that at face value and they'll say, oh yeah, it looks like a birth certificate, has a doctor's signature on it, etc. And what's obvious from this, I don't want to miss the main point. The main point is that they seem to have wanted this to be the agenda that everybody coalesces around. When everybody was really dissatisfied with Clinton, everybody coalesced around the Monica Lewinsky thing, because that could be isolated to just Bill Clinton. And in a similar fashion, you get all of the other more substantive issues with Obama taking a backseat to this just because of the media attention that has been placed there by Donald Trump trumpeting the issue. We don't really think that there's any way to know whether or not he was brought in specifically to do that, but I think you might have a pretty strong case if you wanted to believe that or argue that this was the purpose that Trump has been brought into the campaign, and he appears to be satisfied, and there's nothing really satisfying about this document if you scratch beneath the surface. So whether or not Trump is going to be a spoiler in the campaign in general remains to be seen. He seems to be kind of set up to do that, but we'll see.
Well, you know, it feels like they're playing us for fools.
Yeah.
It feels as if this is like some kind of a plot on an hour-long television drama, and by the end of the hour you figure out that Obama's the schmo and Donald Trump is the hero. How stupid do they think we are?
It's the presidential reality show. It's like, yeah, America has been so dumbed down that they can do the presidency as reality television. It's just absurd. And they're trying to script this whole thing, and that's the overconfidence that they have because they control the mainstream media. And those people that are getting their main sources of news outside of the mainstream media, they're not fooled for a minute, but there are still a ton of people that believe what the mainstream media, major networks, including Fox, are telling people.
Wow. Well, please think for yourselves. You also mentioned to me that Gary Johnson announced that he is considering running for president, and he's kind of a Ron Paul style libertarian.
Yeah. Gary Johnson's kind of Ron Paul light, in my opinion. He's real good, but he's still got a little remnants of the neocon baggage to some extent, or more, maybe more oriented towards the Democratic Dennis Kucinich type of thing. Although he was a Republican governor in New Mexico, and as recently declared, he's a good man and doesn't appear to be completely aware of the whole setup, as you can pretty strongly suspect that Ron Paul is. He knows more than he's saying. You know, when somebody comes right out and says that the CIA is running the country, you know he's pretty awake, and that's Ron Paul. So I'm excited. Gary Johnson is in the race. Anything that will help bring real issues into the arena is a good thing. So we're excited about that.
Very good. We'll see how all that develops. I'm rooting for Jesse Ventura as vice president. I don't really care who the president is. Just kidding. But it would be exciting if Jesse got in there. That would also probably satisfy some of the people who want the presidential election as reality TV. We were aware that there was a royal wedding this week. We did not actually watch it, so we're not reporting on it, but we would just like to touch on a few issues regarding the British royals. They're actually Habsburgs. They're German for the most part. They their claim to the throne is questionable, and I believe they brought Diana into the family because she had Stuart blood, and they felt that they would legitimize their claim to the throne to some extent through Diana's offspring. So, Don, do you have anything you'd like to say about the royal wedding?
Just that Americans really need to get back to the roots. You know, there are a lot of people that are liberty-minded that are pretty much awake to the whole historical fraud that the monarchy is, and I don't think it's taking it too lightly to call it that, because, like Cindy said, the royal family of England is really from Germany, and these people have the claim to be benefactors of the people, but really they're not. They're really stealing from the people. When there was I forget where the statement came out, but the Queen, in some statement that came out this week, was asked about the different branches of socialism and republic or capitalism, and that's what it was. And she said, well, we're older than that. And she's right. They are older than that. The monarchy their roots are feudalism. And if you look at what is happening in terms of global government, what you'll see is that it's an attempt to go back to a feudalist type society where the very small percentage of super wealthy elites control everything, and the people are slaves, having lost the individual sovereignty. So Americans should know better. We fought a revolution with people that totally recognized this, and we thought, those of us that believed that we were still a free country for the last several decades, myself included, thought that for the most part the monarchies had been overcome, that dictatorial leadership was no longer the case. Now, many of us understand that there really is a banking and hereditary oligarchical dictatorship that is attempting to regain that ground and just disguise it as democracy or a government of the people. So it disturbs me when I see Americans fawning over this wedding between these nobodies. They won't even tell you their last name. Ever wonder why that is? Well, people might begin to learn about them. They might begin to learn that they're not really even British. So it's a scary thing that's happening when you have such major media attention all over America. And like I said, Americans should know better. Sure, there are Christians who recognize some parallels between the kingdom of this world and recognizing that the only duly appointed leadership is what is allowed to be in place there by God, and he uses that as a foreshadowing of his throne. But I really think that we ought to look beyond that, because as Christians, we want to become more and more responsible, not more and more subservient. As the bride of Christ matures, we're called to grow in responsibility for taking charge of the planet, and not look to some supposed royal leader to take us there, when there's no evidence that these people have any real connection to Christianity or following Christ whatsoever. It's all figurehead stuff intended to manipulate people. So it's discouraging to see all that, and yet there are a growing number of people who are awake to that. So it's a kind of a separation that's happening. More people are aware of the abuses of the monarchy throughout history by having this focus, but there's more people that are being deceived. It's a separation.
Look, do you want to watch what appears to be somebody else's fairy tale life?
Mm-hmm.
And I say what appears to be. Everybody sweats. Everybody bleeds. Fairy tales aren't real. You're a grown up now. It's fun to read them to your children, but would you rather watch what appears to be somebody else's fairy tale life, or live your own rich, fulfilling, accomplished life? Because if you're sitting around watching what somebody else is doing, pretending you're them, guess what? Your kids need you. Your family needs you. That's not real life. Wake up. Live real life. Maybe watch it on TV for an hour, then turn it off and go have fun and enjoy your life.
Right. Don't live vicariously. Live your own life responsibly, making your own decisions, not abdicating that to somebody that claims to know better. And it's not only royals that are trying to step into that void of abdicated responsibility. We have the Bilderberger Group that has been making preparations, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, and Jim Tucker had a report on that either this week or the end of last week. I can't remember. It's all kind of running together. But one of the things that did come out is in a conversation that was leaked between Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller, I believe. There was Kissinger was being stirred up about how some of the information about Libya was leaking into the mainstream media, and it was making it much harder to justify a ground invasion, which he now said that he wants. There are troops there, that Marines that have been positioned off the coast, and that is actually a goal of the global government elite strategists such as Kissinger. They want to basically facilitate with troops whenever it becomes necessary any of these manipulated revolutions that haven't quite gotten off the ground, as is the case in Libya, where you have Gaddafi, who's firmly entrenched and a savvy fighter. So that's a good sign that the truth is leaking out, that it is America is getting fed up with wars that don't make any sense in terms of the national interest. Henry Kissinger wants to make an exception for such things, but Americans shouldn't go along with that for any reason. Wants to bring gas up to $7 a gallon by sometime near the end of 2012, and it is gradually creeping up. And please understand, I think we've discussed this before, that the price of gas is not going up, it's the dollar that's going down. As it becomes harder and harder to finance the U.S. debt, we discussed this last week, the U.S. buys more of the Treasury notes, and that becomes monetizing the debt. When a country buys its own debt, it's just printing more money, either electronically or on paper, and that drives up the cost of everything. That's where we're going. When you're going to have Japan having to sell their U.S. Treasury bonds to rebuild their country after Fukushima, all of that kind of thing, all of China trying to buy less debt, and it's going to be more and more difficult for the U.S. to remain afloat. And this is all according to plan, but we have to be prepared for it. So we have to begin to think about monetary solutions.
And I believe you told me at one point that a part of the plan is to overwhelm the American people financially, so that as we begin to wake up and become aware that we're being, the word that pops into my head is screwed, as people are beginning to realize that we've been disenfranchised, that if we're overwhelmed with debt and our own financial problems, perhaps we will be so downcast, depressed, whatever, more Valium, more Prozac, so that we won't do anything. But we must remain awake, and even if there are financial pressures on us, hold firm. Don and I, we've never discussed this before, and he might ask me to edit it out, but we were in a situation a few years ago where we filed for bankruptcy. We didn't like to answer our phone. We left our lights off sometimes at night because we thought collectors might be knocking at the door if they thought we were home. Those kinds of things definitely do tend to wear you down and lower your self-esteem and so forth, so that you don't feel empowered. But we really, as Americans, as these things begin to happen, we begin to lose our identity as, Captain America. We need to have our identity founded in reality, so that we are aware that we don't need to just roll over and take whatever somebody wants to do to us. We need to move ahead, and we need to continue to insist on integrity in our government, and begin to insist, if we want to be honest about it, that our elected officials behave according to the standards that historically have been required by the Constitution.
And the major problem that we've got, as we've mentioned before many times, is that we have an offshore entity known as the Federal Reserve that is controlling the U.S. monetary supply, credit, and that's completely against the Constitution. It never should have been allowed. And we've got to get away from that. But what we have to be aware of is that we can get rid of the Fed, but as long as we have fractional reserve banking in this country or any other, and it's the dominant system worldwide, of course, then we're going to have problems. If the banks can artificially inflate and deflate through fractional reserve banking the money supply, then there really isn't any way around the money power financial elites being able to buy things up after they collapse those things. So we want to transition to something that makes sense. The obvious thing on the horizon is a gold standard, but I can't understand for the life of me why more and more people don't see through what a huge problem it would be to go back on a gold standard or any commodity-based standard. That people are hungry for real assets. I understand that. Paper that keeps being printed that isn't worth anything, when that happens, you hunger for something that is real and tangible to be the substance that the economy is based on. The problem is this: when the money supply has been, cheap money, fiat money has been the dominant system, then what does that enable? That enables people that are manipulating that system to buy up the real assets over a long period of time, and there's no doubt in my mind that has been going on. Guess who owns the lion's share of the gold, the lion's share of the silver? Silver is hopeful because more and more people are average people are acquiring it, but there are still huge amounts of even silver and other commodities that are controlled by money power that has been using the cheap fiat money, anticipating the crisis that we're in now that's going to accelerate, to buy those real assets. So if we come into a monetary system, go back on a gold standard or some commodity-based standard, then there is going to be the people that control those real assets are going to be able to buy up everything. What we really need is a system that in which the people control a transparent fiat money system. That's very unpopular to say right now, but I really like the way Bill Still puts it, and he's got a lot of credibility in my eyes just because he's thought through this thing over such a long period of time, produced The Money Masters and then Secret of Oz, really has a great handle on what the key dynamics are in this. And one of the statements that Bill Still makes is that in order to be in the public interest, the currency must be valueless. It may seem odd at first, but as long as you have a currency that is a commodity, then you have instantly, as soon as that is pegged, you've made that commodity something that people are going to hoard, something that the hoarding is going to drive up the price. So in order for that not to happen, in order for the currency to be in the public interest, that commodity has to be something that people cannot hoard. So a counterfeit-proof fiat money does foot the bill. The problem now is really not fiat money. The problem is fractional reserve banking and the secrecy of the monetary supply, the opaqueness of the system. If it was open and if it was a valueless commodity that was kept in line with the need, where the quantity of money in circulation was set to make allowances for growth, etc., and there are computer systems well able to do this, that were, as long as it was open and able to be inspected by people of knowledge and communicated, we would have a truly free society, because the monetary system really is at the base of freedom itself.
I know that you have spent a lot of time looking into some of these things, and you have really gleaned a lot of tremendous information, and you've been able to process a lot of the information in ways that help you make determinations about what will work well. And we must be prepared as things begin to go topsy-turvy to have ideas that we can put in place, and Don has really invested a lot of time and thought. And I know that one of the systems, I don't even really want to call it a system, but one of the ways of looking at economics that you have really focused on and feel very good about and believe in is Henry George. Would you like to talk a little bit about his ideas?
Sure. Henry George was an economist that became very popular right after the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln had been printing greenbacks. What the Civil War was came out of the attempt by foreign powers to divide America, divide and conquer, and Abraham Lincoln knew that they wanted to use debt that would result from the war to bring continual enslavement to America. So he issued the greenback, and yes, there were counterfeiting problems that occurred because of the lack of technology to be able to avoid counterfeiting in those days. But out of that greenback movement came some very deep insights. It also happened to be the period of time in which there was the rapid westward expansion, the railroads, the rapid industrialization of America, the boom of the Gilded Age, and that was a period of time in which the the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Now, the cause of that was not the greenback itself, because there was a tremendous amount of flux and different sources of wealth at that time. There was old money, there was new money. You had the Morgans and then the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, other people that rose up out of that rapid industrialization that amassed a huge amount of wealth and were able to dominate the people. One little snapshot of that, one of the films that could probably give you some good pictures about the tail end of that period in the oil boom would be There Will Be Blood.
Oh, Lord.
So you have these reservations of poor, almost like sharecroppers, really, that the people that survived on the oil plantation-like things. So this is the stage that was set where the robber barons were beginning to gain control over America. Henry George asked the question, why, when there is so much progress, is there so much poverty? So his book, called Poverty and Progress, had a great deal to say about those developments. And it's too much to discuss now, but I will say this, that it all comes down to land. And one of the things that happened in America around the time of Teddy Roosevelt was the development of society west of the Mississippi really began to slow down because of the rapid federalization of the land. When the land couldn't be developed as it had been east of the Mississippi in around the end of the 1800s and into the 1900s, the 20th century, the land was tied up. Wealth couldn't be produced in the same way, so the prosperity of America began to decline. And of course, we're familiar with the Federal Reserve being blamed for a lot of that enslavement to offshore banks, but a lot of it is also having to do with the land being tied up and the root source of wealth coming from the land. So unlike a lot of conservatives and even constitutionalists, I'm very interested, and I would encourage more people to look into the ideas of Henry George as they relate to land, because they are intuitively obvious once you begin to look at the fact that it really isn't right for people to own land. It's almost an accepted thing that private property is the foundation of wealth, but when people own more property than they can rightfully use, they can use that to dominate other people. And that's where a land tax that is advocated by Henry George can do wonders to release wealth. Now here's an example. The reason that California became such a productive land agriculturally after the Dust Bowls and all the people that came to California were actually due to the ideas of Henry George and a land tax that financed the water development that made the agriculture possible in California. If it were developed the way that other states were, California would never have become so productive. It was the land tax that financed the water resource development that was necessary in order to bring irrigation to California that was the source of all of the agriculture. So it's a foundation that is rarely seen, the land tax and the rightful use of it, but it's so important in order to release productivity to people.
If you are so inclined, if you have a grasp of how finances work, I'm sure that Don would recommend that you read Henry George. We all need to be prepared for the kind of transitions that are coming before long. Another thought that we had this week was that we don't like being tracked by our iPhones. And the Federal Communications Act of 1996 allowed for that very thing to happen. So could you enlarge on that a little?
I'm very glad that this is getting the media attention that it has recently, but in a way we shouldn't have been surprised. But we were all asleep. Most people were asleep. Although I remember hearing about it in '96, and that was back, of course, when Bill Clinton was president, and there was a lot of hubbub about all the Big Brother stuff going on. That there was missile secrets being sold to China, and there was the V chip, and all these different means of creating a Big Brother foundation. That was indeed happening, and when that Federal Communications Act was passed in '96, there were 5 years in which the communications companies had to input these back doors so the federal government could get into everything, and that encryption wasn't allowed, that the government couldn't break, etc., etc. So even though you've had all of these phones being made offshore in order to sell to Americans, they met these standards, and then of course they were used worldwide, so that became the de facto worldwide standard. So it's not just the iPhone that can be used to track you and spy on you and send messages to you from the government or whatever, but it's all phones, and it's all computers that can be potentially used to spy on you. Microphones that can be turned on without you knowing it, etc. And I don't say all that to say you need to be away from electronic devices. Obviously we're very into them, and we're using them to help communicate truth. But just be aware, and if you're using the devices to communicate liberty principles that America still claims to believe in, then that's great. Anything that will tend to, where we see people being silenced because they're talking about liberty, will only highlight the cause of liberty all the more. So that's a reason to be aggressively communicating truth and liberty and not to hold back. So don't be surprised that this is happening. It's been being prepared for a long time, but be wise and be hopeful as these things get the media attention that they have been, because what that means is that there's people that are going to find ways around them. There's going to be ways that people begin to take down the legislation, prove that it shouldn't have ever been made, etc., etc. So all in all, it's encouraging that people are becoming aware of these things.
And we don't do anything illegal that we're aware of. There are a lot of laws. Maybe we... No, I'm just kidding. We don't do anything illegal. But we're not entirely comfortable with the idea of someone having the means to track us wherever we go. And we do have some little pouches that we can place our cell phones in that cut them off so that they can't communicate without our permission. And look on the internet if you're interested. Find something like that. It's not an end-all be-all solution, but I think it's comforting to know that if you want to, you can cover your cell phone so that it doesn't communicate all the minute details of your life over the last however long you've had it.
Hey there.
Hey, Don. Good to see you again. Cindy.
Hello.
Thanks for asking me to come back on your great show.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks. And I think we talked a little bit before we started here. We're going to talk a little bit about inguinal hernias, which is a kind of a physical problem that a lot of people have, especially as they get older, is that you have like little barriers in your body like that, and you have different body parts that are supposed to stay in certain areas. And either due to trauma or strain and different types of factors, or sometimes actually when you were born with a little weakness here. It's like having fabric that's a little thinner. And then things start to kind of push through it, and then that can cause some problems. That can cause some pain. That can just be kind of annoying. Most of them are down in the inguinal or groin area like that. They can be other places like that. And what can also happen is that they can get caught there and actually become like gangrene, because it's like like a tourniquet, and that can cause an infection, and eventually you
A
actually...
little bit of the intestine.
Yeah, it could get in there and actually cause death if it's not taken care of. So it's something that usually is taken care of by what they do is they find that the little weakness there. They do some surgery. They put a little patch there. One of the big one is Gore-Tex, the stuff that you wear on clothes. Patch that up, and then a lot of times that does it. Unfortunately, sometimes that causes infection. Surgery in itself causes complications. The material itself is foreign, so people can develop an autoimmune type of reaction where the body's trying to, it's like having a splinter, a piece of wood in your skin. It constantly hurts. It's always red because your body says, hey, you're not supposed to have wood in
I've
your...
heard people say they can actually feel that.
Absolutely, because it's a foreign substance. So it'd be like having a sliver of metal or wood down there and cause that reaction. So we don't want to, if you don't have
a Gore-Tex gene?
I'm sure Gore-Tex would love to have royalties on that if they could. Be able to everybody that has that gene owes them $1 or $50.
Yeah.
That would be kind of a good deal.
We're almost there.
Well, they like that. That's where genetic modified foods kind of comes in. Trying to create foods that are genetically modified so they can patent them. So every time that you eat, someone's making money off that. That's a whole different story. We'll talk about the poisons on that. So, being a natural medicine doctor, you have other choices than in terms of just having. Now, a lot of it has to depend on how bad it is, how big it is. But, for a lot of inguinal hernias, and we have a mutual friend, John, that he's been coming in and been seeing improvement there. And so, in my practice, I use lasers. Lasers are kind of fancy-dancy type of light that's able to penetrate in the body and kind of do like bloodless surgery. And it does reduce swelling, increases blood flow, so healing occurs, reduces inflammation, stimulates cell growth and stem cells. So you can actually stimulate stem cells, which is the cutting edge, to actually repair that.
So you're not actually cutting tissue off with the laser, you're stimulating growth.
So maybe before we end, I'll just bring one of my lasers out, and then Cindy can edit it. It promotes collagen formation, promotes faster healing. And so in this article here, Journal of Athletic Training, September 2000, low-level laser therapy facilitates superficial wound healing in humans, a triple-blind sham control. So this even goes beyond just actually...
I see that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's in the Journal of Athletic Training.
That's right, a medical journal.
And this time of year with the I just saw the new pics coming out
football.
for the football.
Yeah, that's right.
That can significantly, this kind of injury can significantly impact.
Well, to be fair, this is where this technology comes from. I mean, as I've mentioned at some of my TV show, on my YouTubes, and possibly this, there's a couple areas that I looked at in terms of looking cutting edge. One is professional sports. You have a man or a woman that's worth $35 million. They don't care if you get a witch doctor in and they throw cow urine on them. They get better. That's all they want. I mean, facetious there, but so that's where this technology comes from. They're looking from around the world at stuff that's able to fix, repair, and have these people recover. That's why we just earlier had a little talk on Protandim about the exciting things that what that does. One of the things it does for athletes who are real strong. They don't have heart disease, they don't usually have energy issues, but they get hurt, they need to recover, and Protandim is able to do that. So that's an important factor. And we actually, one of our members, Gary, he's a real athletic kind of guy, he even notices that in 63, his recovery in terms of after exercise. So they pan the world, and so lasers have been around for at least 50, 60 years. It's still just coming over here because, you're really cutting into, it's all about turf wars. Surgeons make lots of money. They don't want another alternative out there that they're not going to make their $15,000, $20,000. The average inguinal surgery is about $15,000. Well, here's something. So here's something that's natural that can do the same thing. I usually recommend certain nutrients. One of them is a couple of different branched amino acids and certain kind of protein stuff to actually help kind of have the materials necessary to rebuild that the real stuff, not the Gore-Tex, to actually have the body repair that. And so that's kind of an exciting thing.
So this is great because you can have a person that is, a super duper athlete be your benchmark to help you find out what is the best treatment. Right. But you don't have to be a $1 million athlete to benefit from it. And that can help you see that maybe I don't have to pay a surgeon and I don't have to go down that slice and dice
the
road.
Risk and the pain and the recovery and
so much better.
So
well, that's it. So professional sports are one thing, but actually how I got exposed to the lasers was actually through racehorses. I had a patient, and for a while there, they since moved away, was actually learned a lot about other nutritional things, because if you have, once again, a $35 million horse that races and they make $1 million a race, they don't care what's going on. And especially with a horse, guess what? There's no placebo effect on a horse. So it either works or it doesn't work. And that's what they do. And these people will scan the world. And a lot of the initial laser stuff, and as other type of therapies I use, are used on equestrian and racehorses.
Well, veterinarians in general have been a lot more pro-natural than the pharmaceutical influenced medicine.
They're still pretty druggy. You know, they have lots of drugs. But you're right. They're always trying to look for things, because horses, once again, are once again a little bit more sensitive, and they're not able to communicate as well. Oh, I think I'm starting to have kidney failure. Well, they don't know until the horse drops dead. So they have to be a lot more cautious. But you're right. You know, they're definitely a lot more open than, say, a drug doctor.
Whatever the drug doctors don't target primarily tends to look to the real solutions.
And unlike, you know, people, drug doctors actually make more money to keep you sick. No, they have to at least try to keep this animal healthy and performing.
Shorter lifespan.
Right.
Yeah.
And those type of factors like that. So there is a motive to try to, you know, do more positive things, where, yeah, the drug industry, the best type of person like that is someone that they're able to get on drugs when they're 10 years old, keep making them sick, so that when they're 65, they're on 25 drugs. It just, you know, it's just making lots of money.
And thankful for it.
And then they do. They laugh all the way to the bank at the expense of your health and well-being. So that's kind of interesting. So lasers come in different types of formats. The basic principles are, this is a laser here, and it has to do with frequency. Just like in a radio station, there's different frequencies, and there's different frequencies for different healing. Let me see if I have my little chart here. I think I might have that. So different, just like, so if you went to your radio station and went to 560, and that could be classical music, and then you go to 650, that can be rock and roll. Lasers are the same type of thing. Different frequencies have different types of healing properties. The other thing, I don't see it. We can do another one another time.
560 is a talk station, and 102 is a classical.
That's right, exactly. The other issue is the strength. Strength has to do with about how much penetration you have. So you have some lasers that are 5 milliwatts. Milliwatts are a kind of a small amount of watt is the amount of power that occurs, to up to thousands of milliwatts, and so that has a lot to do with penetration. So you need, like, just like a carpenter or even a dentist, they have different tools for different things. So if you have
gauge how deep you're going.
Well, that's right. So if you have a cut that's not healing and superficial things, you can use these lasers that have lower, because it's on the surface. Whereas, like with this, you need something that was able to penetrate deeper into the body like that. And so that's how lasers are kind of worked. And, you know, depending on what kind of laser it is, some of the lower 635 nanometer range and low 5 milliwatts, you don't even have to wear safety glasses. When you start getting into this, the person has to close their eyes, and the doctor, which I have my special glasses I wear and have those on, because you don't want that going into your eye, because it's powerful. So there's some safety issues there.
So you're not going to do it at the camera.
Trained professional. Exactly. So that's what a laser is.
Right.
The continued type of, you know, interest in terms of what's happening in Japan is the radiation. That continues, a lot of concern. So this was actually an article that came out from George Washington University, talking about some things that you can do to how to help protect yourself from low-level radiation. And we've talked a little bit about that. Seaweeds are really good. There's different other types of clays, that bentonite and French clay that absorbs. We have different other types of, what else? Zeolite, which is another type of absorbent. But also we've talked about these NRF2 activating kind of compounds. One of them activates this glutathione, which is the master antioxidant. And that's what this study here is showing as NSOD. The most harmful effects are produced indirectly through radioactivity of water and formations, reactive oxygen species, that's free radicals. Antioxidant enzymes are the primary ways to be able to fix this versus taking external time. And they talk about SOD and glutathione in this particular article. So it really is an important part, not only just because Japan, the levels are still low, but they're still higher than they should be, but there's always radiation around. Once again,
we've got higher levels now. I just saw in the rainwater in San Francisco,
yeah, well,
it's higher than recommended.
Well, that's right. It is recommended because of what's happening in Japan. But even if Japan wasn't around, We still have
Yeah.
radiation due to when you burn coal, radiation comes out. When, from still we're having after effects of what happened back in the 50s and 60s when they have above ground nuclear testing, that radiation is still kind of going around.
So bottom line, whatever you can do to enhance your body's self-healing capabilities, you will have benefits. We will experience cancers from this higher level of radiation.
That's right.
And the people that take the preventative measures...
But radiation is one factor. There's over 80,000 other carcinogenic compounds, and free radicals are a factor in terms of that. Those chemicals, like we were talking earlier about P53, it's a gene that's called the angel gene, is that what happens when radiation or a carcinogenic compound mutates something, the P53 comes in, either fixes it or kills it, end of cancer. So that's how these things are created. So whether or not it's a chemical, radiation, other types of way of causing these changes in these genes and cells that cause cancer, that's what you need to be doing. So you need to be doing this, as we also talked earlier, is doing it proactively. Try to prevent things. Don't wait until you have stage 4 and you got 35 seconds to live and then think, oh, I think I'll try something. It's too late at that time. So prevention is really the key. An ounce of prevention is worth a cure. Pound of cure, thank you.
Ben Franklin.
That's right, Ben Franklin. Also, there was a study from the University of Utah. For every dollar spent for prevention, you save $16 in terms of waiting until things go bad and become reactive.
Wow.
And that's why we're in this disasters. Not only are people getting sicker, it's bankrupting our society.
Well, Cindy has actually found that it's cheaper to buy things that are less processed, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
organic is expensive, more expensive than regular, but
if you're only buying organic food and you're not buying processed food, you will probably save money.
Well,
if you've been buying processed, you switch to all organic, no processed. You can eat much better for about the same amount of money as if you go out and buy everything ready-made and you just cook in your microwave.
Right. Well, because it just kind of makes sense. You have to pay people to get the product, process it, put it in the box, advertising.
Right.
They don't do that for free.
No.
So it's convenience, and so people think, well, that's important. But yeah, we need to go back to, and that's why worldwide, the Mediterranean diet is such a healing thing. In the middle, in Europe and around those areas, people go down to the food market, to the farmer's market, buy their fresh fruits and things, come back, and they cook it. That's the best in the world, right there. And it's not processed. They don't go in and get things in cans as much. They have some, but, the more natural, organic would be better because that has other, once again...
Avoiding microwaving when you can.
When you can. There's other ways of cooking, just old-fashioned type of way to do it. Try not to use any plastics and things, as we talked about, because of the xenoestrogens in there, and the plastic is, even though it seems to be feel real solid, actually has little monomers, little pieces that actually float around in there, and then when you get them agitated through microwaves or just cook them in it, they kind of float out into your food, and believe it or not, you don't have a plastic gene either. Unlike Gore-Tex, maybe you should have one, but you don't. You shouldn't have plastic in your body, and those plastics produce kind of reaction like you're taking hormones. That's why they're called xenoestrogens. These compounds actually then stimulate different little receptor sites, little like door bells in the body, and turns on different things thinking it's estrogen. And estrogen is a great thing, especially if you're a woman. That's what makes sure we're a woman, but even men have estrogen. It's the ratio of estrogen and testosterone that keeps you in your healthy place. When those things start to change, then things bad. Too much estrogen, what's called estrogen dominance, cause all kinds of problems with women, and too much estrogen in men cause all kinds of problems. So you always want that balance.
We won't even get into moves.
No, we won't. Male boobs is a big problem. Actually, it's one of the fastest growing cosmetic surgery things out there.
Oh, wow.
So here's that kind of madness again, spending $20,000, $30,000, and you're not even getting to the cause of the problem. So men will do this thing.
It's a symptom.
It is, it's a symptom.
And when you treat symptoms,
so you can cut it out, just like when some women have this particular type of gene which makes you more predisposed. Now, we've already talked about genes only constitute less than 10% of health or disease. The other side of the community wants to make it feel like that's not the case. Genes constitute everything, and you better take it. So women will actually have prophylactic radical mastectomies, actually take their breast out because they even have this gene. That's still, okay, so you don't die of breast cancer, but you die of bone cancer or your liver cancer. The problem is still there, but people are just madness out there, and the drug and surgeons, unfortunately, go along with this barbaric type of thing.
Well, they're making money.
Well, they're making money, and they're mutilating women. I mean, it's crazy. We already talked about if you have breast cancer, a lumpectomy, taking the lump out, is just as effective as taking, you know, just the breast, or taking the breast and the muscle underneath it. But they make a lot more money, and it's disfiguring and all kinds of stuff. It's just tragic. Just like mammographies, they don't work, but...
Find a natural doctor, like we do.
Oh, thanks. So that was kind of an interesting, you know, in terms of, you know, we had a little presentation about this woman, you know, who, you know, has cholesterol problems like that and is trying to look for other alternatives out there. Don mentioned is that one that's been around for a long time. In fact, that's how statin drugs kind of came. It's what's called red rice yeast extract. I can talk. That has about 13 natural statin drugs, but that has its own kind of issues with it too. I mean,
natural does not always mean that it's good for your body.
Exactly right. Now, would I rather have someone use that versus a statin drug? Yes, but that's the unfortunate thing. There's lots of other things that gets the same benefits, and you don't even get the side effects that the natural statin drugs do. But unfortunately, this woman goes to a drug doctor, and maybe some doctors are knowledgeable. Most of them that I found, because they're spending so much time on the toxic drugs, they don't have time for natural things. He thought he was doing this woman a service, and I would agree that would not be my first choice in terms of, you know, helping you look at helping.
It's a spectrum.
It is.
So you've got to grow in your knowledge, and then you'll be more and more comfortable with what is really good for your body.
That's where really things have come back. It has a kind of a double-edged sword. You would think going to an expert like a doctor, you wouldn't have to know things, but now even more so. You have to take charge of your health.
Absolutely.
You have to be knowledgeable. You actually almost have to come in there, and my patients, fortunately for them, always know more than their drug doctor does. So they go in there with reprints and things, you know, why are you giving me this? This study showed it doesn't do any good, and this is all voodoo, and how come you're not? So that's good. Now, unfortunately, that makes it kind of adversarial, and a lot of drug doctors sometimes get upset, and they'll yell at my patients, and I said, well, you don't need that person. That person's trying to kill you. Or, you know, I mean, why would
Tell
you...
us what you really think.
Right, well, why would you go to a car mechanic that does brakes, and they don't fix your brakes, and you keep crashing, you get hurt? You'd sue that person. You'd throw them in jail. Well, that's what happens. You go to these drug doctors, they give you this crap, it doesn't work, it makes you more sick, and you keep paying them. I mean, it's just like madness. I mean, and there's no science.
No.
I mean, it's
bizarre. That's what happens when you're locked into a system and you can't see your way out of the system.
It's a monopoly.
Break out.
Just like when Eisenhower said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." What's 500% bigger than that? The drug and surgical industrial complex.
500%.
500%.
Wow. That is.
This is the biggest, nastiest
statistic.
Yeah. So they got this locked in, and they don't want any competition. They don't want to rock the boat. Everybody's making lots of...
It's a death culture.
Well, it is. I mean, there's just nothing about health. As we talked about, like in veterinarian, at least there's a little emphasis. They got to keep the animals alive, especially for racehorses. But in Chinese medicine, the Chinese medicine doctor, he or she only got paid if you're healthy. As soon as you stopped getting healthy, you got sick, they'd stop paying. So then the doctor would have to do something to get you back to healthy. We're the other way around. They make money off you being sick. The more sick you are, the more procedure they do.
It's tragic.
More people make money. They might not make it, but their friend down the corner or down the next door down in the hallway, yeah, go see Dr. Smith. He'll do surgery for $75,000.
So they have a vested interest in sickness.
Well, they play a nice little con game saying, no, we're really healthy like that, you know. And to be fair, what medicine's really good for is whether they got most of their training is in wars. They're great with acute care trauma. You have a knife in your head, yeah, you don't want to see me, I don't want to put any Protandim on that or herbs like that. You need acute care trauma. Unfortunately, that's only 22% of the overall sick care system, but they've kind of spun that now into everything. So they're great at that, that's what they're good for. Once they get you stabilized, that's when you need to move away from them and go see a functional medicine doctor or a natural medicine doctor like myself or others other, because we're the ones that are going to help you heal, prevent things like that. But so they have a place to play, but it's unfortunately they've gotten into this system where, you know, they control 99.97% of everything, even the stuff that doesn't work, stuff that chronic diseases they have no benefit for. They think they do. They spend a lot of money. They make different types of biomarkers reduced, like in cancer. Yeah, they're all happy if they're able to reduce the tumor size by 50%. The patient still dies the same amount of time, exactly, but they're happy and everybody got their $300,000.
And you don't really have a true desire to eliminate the disease, because that's what's generating the whole.
Well, they say they do,
income.
but like this woman, they have high cholesterol. That is one of 13. That's right. It's not the only one. Half the people who die of heart disease have, once again, controlled their cholesterol, because there's other factors that the drug doesn't work on. So they have, so that helps. But what other industry can give you something that lowers it when you know there's an alternative that's cheaper and better?
And holistic. And
well, not only holistic, but doesn't cause now 5 other new problems.
Right.
So they're on the statin drugs.
Yeah.
That causes liver problems. Okay, here's a liver drug like that. Now the liver drug causes this problem. Here's another drug like that. I mean, what other industry? Like I said, that'd be like going in to get your car, your oil changed, and you come out and they screwed up your transmission, they screwed up your brakes, and you're happy. All I asked for is change the oil. Oh, that's okay. That's going to cost you $25,000. Oh, okay. I don't pay for it. I have insurance. So that's why it's okay, because if people had to whip out their wallet and pay for this, then this would stop yesterday. But then that's part of the scheme, is keeping this all hidden.
That's right.
People never knows how much all this costs.
Take a look at what's really happening.
And what's going on the credit card. Even with the insurance companies.
Yeah.
You go in, your insurance, even if you're paying, $12,000 to $20,000 a month, how does that pay for someone that has cancer for $400,000? It doesn't. So what they did is, it's a Ponzi scheme. They take the money with the healthy people, they take all the money and paid for all these expensive things. We've already passed the tipping point. There's more sick people than healthy people. So now it's all on credit card. That's called the debt. And every year, and we've talked about it on here, little people like Dr. Garson, who's only an MD, MPH, Vice President of Virginia University, past President of the Medical School at Virginia, says, medicine wastes over $1.3 trillion a year. Remember what $1 trillion in 6 years, if we saved that for 6 years, everybody in the United States would have a free house. Got it? That's how much money this is. Because now it's gotten to, like when we were growing up, $1 million was a lot. Then it was $1 billion. Now people talk, I know we're at $1.2 trillion or $14 trillion national debt. What does that mean? People don't even know. Here's another type of example. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. So you're getting about how big these numbers are in terms of money?
Astonishing.
No, but people talk about it like, okay, so we're at $1 trillion. Okay, still give me my freebies.
So you couldn't count that in your lifetime. You could not count to $1 trillion.
That's right.
I'm just looking forward to
if you counted every second. Yeah. That's right.
Even if you counted as quickly as you possibly could.
32,000 if you counted one second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as fast as you go. You would never be able to do it in your whole lifetime. But that's
Don't waste your life trying.
Well, no, right. But that just shows you, once again, the whole bigger scheme of what's happening.
Don't you think our car repair could be a lot better if we had car care insurance? I can't wait for it.
I know.
We're making such progress with the human body.
Well,
we can do this with cars.
Well, that's right. And I can put Coca-Cola in my gas tank. I don't care.
Yeah.
I can drive around with my foot on the brake.
Because you've insured your car.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. The brakes wear out in 5 miles. The engine blows up in 2 miles. I don't care. And most people don't pay for their insurance. Someone else does it. I don't care. I got insurance.
Yeah. So we just get the responsibility doled out to different people. So
Absolutely.
we don't have to.
Because I'm only a little baby. Yeah. I can't think. Ooh, where's my little pacifier? Oh, here's American Idol. There we go. Watch some football. There we go. Now we're happy.
Yeah.
Drink your soda. There we go.
Ouch.
This is better than last time he smacked me, right? So that's.
Thank you, Dr. Noah.
Well, and that's what's so exciting to have, like Don and Cindy share with people out there, is this goes way beyond just health. Personal freedom, personal liberty is everything in terms of your life like that.
Absolutely.
Who wants to be...
You want to be free?
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, who wants to eat right like that? But once again, you have government, restricting your thoughts, your liberties, your actions. Mm-hmm. That's not good either.
No.
Even though you're healthy, I mean, who wants that? But that's part of the problem, is if you are healthy and your mind is thinking critically, now you're a danger to them, because now you're thinking outside the box. Why are you controlling me? Who are
Exactly.
you? Who are you behind that?
Exactly.
You know better than me.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. And the Wizard of Oz, that's right. So they got all this big projection, but behind that, they don't. That's right. So that's why it's exciting, and I feel really privileged for allowing me to be on show at least the health aspect or the sickness aspect, as you talk
That's
about.
a very significant aspect.
Well, it is,
Absolutely.
Because we talk about the industrial military complex,
Right.
but as you're saying, this is much
5
bigger, a
times
much
bigger,
bigger
yeah.
influence.
This has
Much
a bigger
bigger problem.
impact, yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of, not only in terms of not getting people to have that freedom of health and critical thinking, but in terms of financial costs. It's a burden on our society.
Absolutely.
Once again, there's only so much pie.
And it's a mechanism for enslavement.
It is. That's what's exactly right. If you don't have that money because you're spending it like that, that limits what you're able to do. That is a type of being a
is.
slave.
And so if you're waiting for the government to tell you you can only put this in your body, we're almost there, but it's being done already in a much more subtle form.
Right.
If you don't have the freedom to decide what goes in your own body, you're not free.
That's
and
right.
a lot of people have been conditioned to go there already just because they're in this sick care paradigm and they're not really in control of what they put in their body.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll do maybe our next one about Monsanto. Monsanto is actually trying to modify living things, both plants and animals, so they have a patent on it.
Yeah.
So every time you buy this, they get their residual.
Yep.
And this is crazy. Unfortunately, we'll talk about the science. Modifying, these things have some serious problems. One is we're not as smart as we think we are. So as you make changes like this, little subtleties happen that can be devastating
Right.
in terms of both globally and
You never know
genetically.
where it'll show
You
up
don't know,
once
but,
you
but,
release
the
it.
scientists who are being, once again, prostitutes for Monsanto will tell you anything. Oh yeah, that's no problem. That breaks down the grades, and then they find out 10 years, oh, that didn't do that, and like that. But they were retired.
One small example, they used to say Roundup was biodegradable.
It
I
isn't.
never heard anything. And
Exactly.
that just went away just quietly. They're not allowed to tell that lie anymore.
Well, what the Nazis show. You tell a big enough lie often enough, then it becomes the truth.
Yeah.
And then you just keep saying
Right.
it. And they got the money, just like the drug companies. They got $40 billion a year to keep saying, this is good for you, this is good for you. No, it's crap. This is good for you, this is good for you. No, this is crap.
A lawsuit here, a lawsuit there, that's chump change.
Well, they actually put that in the equation.
Yeah.
It'll cost us $2 million to do the lawsuit. We'll make $4 billion. No brainer. We'll do the $4 billion, even though we kill the
And we
people.
can write off the lawsuit.
And we can light off. That's right. It's a business expense. Exactly. So it's a win-win. It's like a no-brainer. You don't
Yeah.
even talk about it.
That's right.
Even though people are dying and being hurt, it's a no-brainer. Exactly
Be
right.
self-determined. Think for yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't
Take
believe what
charge.
you're told, except by us. Just kidding.
Well, that's it. You want to be from Missouri. You don't want to trust any, well, if you're from New Jersey, you don't want to trust anybody. So you always want to just try to be open mind, hear things, and then investigate.
Investigate. That's exactly
yeah,
right.
Do your homework.
That's right.
Yeah, it's your body. You decide.
Yeah.
Well, the Missouri, I think the slogan is, I'm from Missouri, show me. Yeah,
Show me.
show me this stuff. Just don't tell me, show me this
Right.
stuff. As we just had a little presentation, show me the science. Okay, what kind of science is it? Is it a tier 1 or first party, or is it third party? These are different factors. And so you can make, intelligent decisions. Once again, treat everybody like adults. Like, you're smart, you're
Absolutely.
capable, instead of treating them like a little baby.
That's right.
And that's what, that's where it goes.
No more pacifiers.
Oh, shucks. How about my little blankie? Right, so I gotta use my blankie? Oh. Well, thanks again for allowing me on your
Thank you.
show. You guys are
As
the best.
always.
You guys are the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Noah.
Thank you.
So, at this time, we will move into our Pearl culture discussion, which is very light this week because we've been completely stuck on Lie to Me. I can't remember that we've watched any other film than that. Maybe a couple of old Monk episodes or Columbo episodes. But Lie to Me speaks to us on a lot of levels. One is that it's just great entertainment. Another is that it's educational to learn the science of determining whether somebody is telling a lie or telling the truth. And Don actually purchased a couple of Dr. Ekman's books, so he'll give you a little rundown on those.
Right, here is Telling Lies, Paul Ekman. It's Clues to Deceit in the Marketplace, Politics and Marriage. And also by Paul Ekman, Emotions Revealed, Recognizing Faces and Feelings to Improve Communication and Emotional Life. So one more emphasized on greater emotional fulfillment, and one more focused on uncovering deception, both aspects of the same study. Like anything, this is kind of two-edged, because unless you begin to study this stuff yourself to some extent, the fact that knowing that there are people that have this understanding and there's technology that can capture these facial expressions on camera actually lends credibility to the 1984 style enslavement grid, with using the technology to say you were planning some terrorist attack based on this expression on your face. Now, once you get into this and you understand it, in reading Paul Ekman's blog about Lie to Me, you'll understand that that's not really true, that they can't really tell whether somebody is planning a terrorist event. He says he's actually still doing research on this, but it doesn't look hopeful. But that doesn't stop a tyrannical government from telling you that they do have that capability. So, like anything I've noticed with technology, people tend to overestimate what it's capable of, and this is no exception. When you have, I've been in computers for a long time, and the constant assumption of people that are not computer savvy, that are not really technology oriented, is that there's this magic change button that you push that does whatever you want it to do, and it can almost read your mind. It's the same type of thing with the facial recognition technology. So I say all that to say it's worth studying, so that you know that if somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes by claiming that they can read your mind, basically. So all very interesting stuff. It's opened a whole new door for us that we're excited about. We want more people in the Liberty Movement to get onto this, in the same way that there's technology savvy people with computers in the Liberty Movement. This is a whole nother arena. We were excited to find that our friend John, who is very much on the same page with us, and in many, many things, not everything, but many things in terms of understanding the Orwellian society developing around us. It's his favorite show too, and we didn't even know that. So it's exciting, and maybe you were there before us and are glad that we're talking about it. But, look into it. We enjoy it.
Well, I think that's just about all we have for today. We may be producing a supplemental video this week. In a community near us, there are some Native Americans who are actually walking through a struggle to preserve a burial ground, and the federal government's involved. The local community is wanting to build a park and move the bones, but they're potentially getting federal funding. So there are a lot of issues surrounding that, and we would like to give a little bit of focus. So we're hoping to maybe interview some of the Native Americans and branch out a little and give you a little bit of local news. And a little more local news, Liberty on the Rocks is meeting in Walnut Creek this coming Wednesday at, I believe it's 6:30 at Pyramid Brewery. So if you're in the Bay Area, maybe you can make it there, and we'd like to meet you, introduce yourselves to us. And Don, do you have anything further to say?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, and have a great week. Be free.